Are you saying you faked with me?
Yeah.
Wrong. Now you're single.
What do you know about sexual relations?
Is it true that if you don't use it, you lose it?
I'm a little worried about being a slut.
You're listening to the Come With Us podcast, talking the good, the kinky, and the ugly. Here are your hosts, Beth, Aaron, and Tina.
Hello, all you sexy holes and poles. Welcome to Come With Us podcast, where we've got everything men want to know about love, sex, and relationships. We know that sexy stuff matters as much as the lovey-dovey stuff, and we're here to help you get all the pleasure that you want and deserve. Today, we are so excited to be talking with Eric, powerful Eric. Eric personally struggled with porn addiction and even traditional recovery methods for decades. Finally, one day, Eric stopped calling himself powerless over porn, and thus, Powerful Eric was born. Eric's now the host of the 5-star rated podcast Porn Talk and is a porn and sex addiction recovery coach. He is also co-author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Think Big. He helps addicted men worldwide not only break the habit, but transform their sexual energy to repair relationships, increase sales, and vigorously pursue a great life. Welcome, Eric Zuzak. And thank you so much, Aaron and Tina, for being here. And let's give Eric a great warm welcome. So glad you're here.
Thank you, Aaron, Tina, Beth. The party people are in the house.
For real.
This party started.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, because while you talk a lot about addiction stuff, we try and talk about, the good, the bad, and the ugly about sexy stuff. And certainly addiction, that's kind of the ugly side. But I love that you are so willing to share your personal story, because I think that's huge. We've had a therapist on here before to talk about the clinical kind of sides and stuff of sex and porn addiction. But I'm really excited to hear. Oh, thank you. We're sitting here finagling with our camera angles and stuff for those of you who are watching. Oh, now Aaron's totally out of it. But anyway. So, all right. So
Nobody's
Eric,
watching for me.
They're always interested in you. But,
no.
All right. Well, Eric, start with the obvious. How did you decide to name yourself Powerful Eric?
Well, as you said, I struggled with traditional ways of breaking addictions. I did the regular route. I went to a regular therapist. Of course, they put me on antidepressants. Then I was told I needed to go to 12-step meetings. Yeah. And so I went to Sexaholics Anonymous. I went to Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. I went to Sexual Compulsives Anonymous. You name the Anonymous, I went to it. I'm not alcoholic, but I went to Alcoholics Anonymous. I went to DA, all these different 12-step programs. And the one thing that was very consistent in them all is they have you say you are powerless over the addiction. And I did that for almost 2 decades with very little success to show for it. And for example, at a meeting, I'd say, "Hi, my name is Eric Zuzak. I'm a sexaholic. I am powerless over porn." And then you would describe some of the worst behaviors that you've done. And then you'd say, "And I've been sober for 3 days," or whatever. And so obviously it was not working after almost 2 decades. Out of desperation, I looked and sought and searched, and I found this little app that used the science of mindfulness to break addictions. And just on a whim, I was creating my login, and I thought, I've been calling myself Powerless Eric for decades. What if I put my login as Powerful Eric? And in that moment, powerless, pitiful, porn-addicted Eric died, and Powerful Eric was born. I don't call myself Powerful Eric out of ego. It's out of having called myself a piece of shit and powerless for decades. So that's how I came to name myself Powerful.
And how would you describe a porn addiction? What is for a porn addiction for our listeners who don't know?
Well, you could describe it kind of the same as an alcoholic or drug addict. There are some people that can have a beer and they're fine. But there's others that can't. It's how it negatively, if it's negatively impacting your life and you can't stop, then I'd call that an addiction. But on all these different podcasts, I talk and different guests and that we get caught up in the terms and what we call it. Is it addiction? Is it not an addiction? And to me, that's almost irrelevant on if it's negatively impacting your life, it's negatively impacting your life, whatever you call it.
I like that. I think that people do, and I'm as a lawyer, right? I do get completely caught up in terminology and stuff. But I do think you're right that we need to look at the general picture to see whether or not there's something you want to improve, right? If it's not helping you, then maybe we need to work and to improve it.
Yeah, and it clearly was not helping me. Just to give you an idea, I used to what I call burn days. I'd get up in the morning, start viewing porn, skip breakfast because I'm going at it, skip lunch because I'm still going at it, still keep going. I'm edging all day and maybe firing a few shots across the bow, still keep going. Dinner rolls around, I am starving. So I throw a pizza in the oven, go back to it while the pizza's cooking, but I get this tunnel vision when I'm viewing porn and forget about time. And then realize, oh boy, I smell something. The pizza is burning. So I go back, take the burnt pizza out, eat some burnt pizza, go back to it, stay up till 2-3 o'clock in the morning. Then I have to get up and go to work the next day and have the worst porn hangover ever, being literally juiced of your life force energy and having little sleep and having a ton of shame and guilt. I call that a porn hangover or being the porn zombie.
Wow.
That's wild. That is definitely all consuming.
Yeah. I had no idea that people could actually get that addicted, right? I mean, it's just like, I can't imagine people drinking for 23 hours a day, right? And then they do. So, yeah, thank you. That sounds painful.
How old were you when you first started watching porn?
Very young.
Okay.
So internet wasn't even around when I was a kid, but I had a neighbor down the street that we would house sit for, and he had a mammoth. Now, this almost seems comical now. It's like a Playboy's. That's like
I know that's so tame.
It's so super soft, but he literally collected them all the way back to the very first issues. And so I would happily volunteer to house sit for him because I knew I would have access to this mammoth collection. So that is one soft way that it had started. But then I found VHS tapes, and then from there it was pretty I was
consistent.
booked. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And were you married when you were having this addiction?
Yes. And I swore to myself when we got married that I was done. I'm like, I don't need this anymore. I'm getting married. I can have sex on a regular basis, at least hopefully. And it lasted 2 weeks.
Really?
Yeah, I lasted 2 weeks and then I was back at it.
Oh my God. Had you told your now wife, then fiance, that porn was a problem for you? Or
no, I did not. No one knew. Well, except for these people at these meetings, but like I have brothers and very close friends, and none of them knew. This was my deep, dark secret because I had a mammoth amount of shame and guilt about it, because in porn, it's just like alcohol. You may start off with a beer and then maybe you need more beers, and then you go to some wine and then to the whiskey, and then you start doing drugs. Well, it's the same way with porn. You start out with like the Playboy, and that's plenty. It's like, wow, but then you need something a little harder. You need something harder, something weirder, something kinkier. And like, for example, I am a straight male, and I found myself watching transsexual porn. Like, why the hell am I watching transsexual porn? I don't like guys. And that's very common. Like a lot of the guys, it's so weird. A lot of the guys that contact me, that is something that they are starting getting to as well. And it gets a little disturbing, so.
And does it desensitize you to like real sex? How and like your real sex life?
Yeah, it totally desensitizes you. And a lot of the guys, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. I can't believe the number of guys that reached out to me that have porn induced erectile dysfunction. We call it for short, we call it PIDE.
Wow.
And I'm talking young people.
I think I know. I think I experienced this with my ex. Like he couldn't. I don't know if this is the same thing. He couldn't finish without watching porn.
That's exactly it.
Like could not finish.
Wow.
That's porn induced erectile dysfunction. Even if you're able to get it up, if you can't finish, I just had a doctor, an MD on my podcast that specializes in this. She has treated over 7,000 men, and she said there is a range, of severity, and that's on the range. Like there's some guys that can get it up, but then they're not able to finish without the porn.
Right. So no, that was him. Yeah. So he could get it up, but he couldn't finish without it. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Would you think then that if that's an issue for somebody, that maybe that's the point where you need to stop and think about how you're going to reduce the amount of porn in your life?
Well, absolutely. And that's when guys often reach out to me. They're like, oh my God.
Okay.
My penis broke.
Right. Oh my God.
Yeah. So again,
my dick doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so appreciative that you are so honest and speak about, like, as somebody who's come through this, because again, I believe that there are good uses for porn. The same way, alcohol. Some people, again, can really enjoy it. For me, I've tried to drink a lot. It just doesn't work for me. Right. And I understand there's addictive personalities, whatever. So I think it's really important for people to recognize that if you're using porn and it's not impacting, like if it's benefiting your life in some way, that's great. Keep going. But we want to also just make sure you've got these guidelines for when maybe things are getting a little bit out of control, or you want to kind of put a pause. And then for others to feel better that if you've got a problem, it doesn't say anything about you. You can have this amazing, wonderful life like you do. But you do have to face the facts. Right?
Yeah. And like I said, how is it affecting your life? Is it negatively impacting your life? If your penis doesn't work, it's negatively impacting your life. And the challenging thing, or disturbing thing, trend as of late, is that I've had children reach out to me for help.
That's crazy.
12-year-old girl, a lot of teen boys. Just to be clear, I do not coach children. However, I do have a great resource that I send them to that does help them. But yeah. So yeah, there's clearly something amiss. There's something awry. There's something wrong. The porn that is depicted like on these tube sites, like Pornhub, for example, that is like the mainstream porn. And, like there's this alternative type porn that's more like I guess you could say female type of porn. You're not going to find that, or if you do, there'll be very little on Pornhub. You have to pay for that. And I have a controversial guest that I just had on my show, and she is trying to create, or not trying to, she's created a genre that is how do I say this? Like not demasculating, not showing women being abused. And she is creating the first social media sex site.
Wow.
Make love, not porn. It's called Make Love, Not Porn.
Right. It's amateur porn, right? Like people,
Well,
what's her name?
shoot, I should know it.
Okay.
I can't think of her name, but it's Make Love, Not Porn.
Yeah.
And so, yes, you could say it's amateur porn, but they have very strict guidelines. Like they watch every single minute of a video before it is posted. They have, and it has to meet their guidelines. Like
Yeah.
if someone's getting abused on the video, like they're not going to post that.
Right.
And I am really torn on this because something needs to change. Like somebody needs to. Porn's not going to go away. Like porn's not going to go away. So, but somebody needs to change the way it's going, and she is doing that, and she's opening the conversation. A big part of her website is to not just about porn, but just to talk about sex, and which is why I'm here on this show, because that's what you guys do. You talk about sex. Whereas in the United States, it's so crazy. It's so black and white. It's like we don't want to talk about sex. We don't talk about sex with our children. Yet over 30% of the websites are porn.
Right. And they use sex to sell everything that's not related to sex. And yet, again, because we're just confused. So, no, I appreciate that. And I can't remember the name. Did you find the woman's name?
Cindy Gallup.
Yes.
Cindy-
That's her. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
Cindy Gallup, yeah.
She's a dynamo. She's a force to be reckoned with. She looks like she may be small in stature, but she is large in presence.
Yeah. So can you watch any porn now, or is it like with alcoholics where they just have to say, no, we can't have any of it?
Well, that is a choice. For me, I choose not to watch anything because, I mean, I was really bad.
Apparently. Like,
And what?
So
Go ahead, Aaron.
I was gonna say, because we've talked about, like you had talked about, falling into a hole, and like I've made the comparisons before and I know Tina and I have talked about it, like just like if you're sitting at the office and you're on YouTube and you fall into a wormhole of YouTube where you're watching like, hey, I'm going to watch this guy learn how to make his own fishing lures. And then all of a sudden there's a thing that's like, hey, you want to watch this dude work on a boat engine? And then it's, hey, this is how, and then you start like falling in like further down of like a more expensive hobby rabbit hole. Like for me, it's like, oh, hey, now let's tour this $800,000 RV that somebody's going to tour the entire world with and never have to set foot on the water. Like it's very weird, but we've talked about this before of like in our pet, like, you and I both admitted to it before, like every now and then you just fall down a porn rabbit hole where you're just like, and all of a sudden you'll look up an hour later and go, wait a minute, I just wasted an hour of the day. Like,
especially on Reddit.
I could have gotten this out in like 5 minutes and gone mowed the lawn and done the dishes or taken the dog on a walk. And all of a sudden you look around and you're like, oh crap, I just wasted an hour.
Crazy.
But then I was going to ask you, like, where does like erotic literature and stuff fall in between? Does that affect you, or is that more of it's not the visual medium, so it's fine?
Well, one, I have not had anybody reach out to me about that, and it's not something that I ever really explored. That's not something that really, being a guy, visually, not that, reading a story couldn't do it, but
yeah,
or visually stimulated. So I don't have a great answer for you on that. But you were talking about the falling into the rabbit hole of like YouTube, for example. Oh my gosh, all those type of things like social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Like, let's say you're on Instagram and like, I would literally go on there for a legitimate reason for something that I needed to do. Go on there. I need to go check this out. Maybe some business has something on Instagram or Facebook. And then I get caught up in my feed. I'm like, and then an hour, 2 hours goes by. I'm looking at, I don't watch cat videos, but cat videos. And then I'm like, what? I don't even remember why I got on Facebook to begin with.
And I think that's the point though. And I think the porn industry has done something very similar to what social media sites or
Well, I mean,
YouTube
they
have done-
pioneered it. I mean, everything
Sure.
that happens in the world, it happens in porn first.
But yeah, so right. So you click on something and then you're there and then you're there something else related and then you click on something. Yeah, so you're very right. They want you
They
to
target
stay. They want you to stay. They want you to
Yeah.
watch.
yeah, they make their ad revenue off of clicks and
Right.
time spent on your actual screen of how
Exactly.
long,
So
and they track all that crap.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what finally brought you out? Like what happened to you? How did you recover? And then perhaps explain a little bit of what the method is that you teach your
Suggest.
clients or you suggest. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will tell you that story. Before I do that, I want to give one tool that your listeners can use, even if you're not addicted to porn or anything like that. I would still find myself falling in these social media traps. So I found this thing. It's 100% free, no cost ever. It's not one of these things where you sign free and then it's cost. No, it's 100% free. It's called News Feed Eradicator. Now, unfortunately, it's only good for laptops and desktop computers, but at least it's a start. And what it does is if you go onto Facebook, like I need things on Facebook. I need to go to a particular group. So I go to that group. But when I come out of that group, it would go to my feed. Well, what News Feed Eradicator does, it eliminates your feed and it puts an inspirational quote there instead.
Really?
That's hilarious.
It helps so much. I can't tell you how much this helps me. It works on YouTube as well.
Mhm.
Wow.
And so I can still go view whatever videos I want to view or whatever on YouTube. But as far as like that feed there, it's got that inspirational quote. And man, it has saved me so much time. So much time.
So it's like a plugin, I'm guessing. You download it offline and stuff, right?
Yes. News Feed Eradicator. And I contacted the creator of it. He made it for just his own personal reasons. And he said, he looked, and he's like, wow, this thing is taken off. I'm actually going to have him as a guest on my show. But anyway, to get back to your question. So how did I finally, break free? And this has been a long road. And the challenge I had is that, I'm really into personal development and things like that. For example, that book that I'm in, Think Big, Brian Tracy's one of the authors in the book. And I loved personal development and all those different types of things. But then I would go to these 12-step meetings and they have you say, well, you're a porn addict, you're a sex addict, and they use what's called the disease-based model of addiction, which most recovery programs do. And those programs say you have a disease and you have it for life. And so I'd go to these meetings and I'd say, hi, I'm a sexaholic. I'm powerless over porn. I've been not doing this thing for X amount of days. And it was total opposite of what I was learning in personal development. It was so confusing. In personal development, they say, state what you want, what you want to be, or as it has already been created, and focus on the things that you want in life, not on the things that you don't want. And these 12-step meetings, it was the opposite. We count the days that you're not doing something. I got a question for you guys. In your lives, what things do you get rewarded for, or how many things do you get rewarded for not doing? Like when you go to work, do they reward you? Hey, Aaron, you did not do that today. We're going to give you a raise.
Never.
I mean, that's a great point, because
unless it's a bad thing, which is I guess.
But I mean, yeah, that's a more proactive way of looking at it. Of like,
Right.
Hey, don't reward yourself for, you're not trying to reinforce through avoiding negative behavior. You're trying to, and like, this is a really random. Sorry, I get ADHD when we talk about this stuff. Years and years ago, I was at the aquarium in Chicago, and they had brought out a animal rescue that was working with dogs, and they were teaching about how they train dogs. Like they'll go and they'll completely take in a dog, train it completely, and then find a family. So like Whereas a family who maybe has young kids, they don't want to take in a dog or go adopt a dog from a shelter that they don't know they can trust around their kids and they know won't follow order or like won't follow direction and stuff like that. And then, you know, you have kids that you have to worry about. Now you have to worry about a dog that you're trying to train. Now you have to like, but the way that they train their dogs and stuff is all through positive reinforcement. So it was all like their entire mission was like, we don't reward for not doing the bad thing. We reward for doing the good thing. Because if you're just rewarding for not doing the bad thing, all you're doing is putting attention on the bad thing. Like if you
great analogy
reward on the good thing, then you don't even think about the bad thing anymore of, well, am I going to do the bad thing? No, because it's not in your mind. You're thinking about the positive and the front, what's in front of you, not behind you.
That is awesome, dude. I'm going to use that. Can I use that?
Go for it. Go for it. You can say it was you at the aquarium and everything. I don't care.
Good. That's really good. Because when I work with guys, they're counting days. Oh, I went 5 days. I made it 5 days. And in the beginning, there's some merit. You do need to count days in the very beginning, perhaps. But there's a point where it becomes defeating because then what happens? Guy makes it 10 days. Then he has a slip or a relapse. Then he goes back to 0 again. Like, oh God, I'm starting over again. And at 12-step meetings, if you don't have 30 days of sobriety, you can't chair, you can't run the meeting. So you go back to 0, you can't chair the meeting anymore. And so what I tell guys, if you are going to count days, then like if you have a slip on that, you have 10 days and then you have a slip, then when you get back on the horse and have another successful day, and that's day 11, you don't go back to 0 every time. Because just because you had a slip or relapse does not negate all the successful days you've had. And then also I say, but really I say, if you're going to count days, don't focus on what you didn't do. Focus on what you are going to do. For example, I did yoga for 7 days in a row, or I worked out at the gym for 2 weeks in a row. You know, try to get those streaks going and focus on the things that you're positively bringing into your life rather than focusing on this thing that you're not doing.
I like that. I think that makes a lot of sense, and it builds a sense, again, restores that shame that you had and fills it with something more powerful, actually, which is that you're worthwhile something.
So it really helped. I mean, it was tremendously helpful to get out of the 12-step meetings and, to not be counting days like I was. And then I found using the science of mindfulness, and mindfulness is a very large umbrella term. It encompasses many different things. It could be anything from meditation to martial arts. And the thing that really put me over is when I discovered, and this falls under the mindfulness, is the tapping. It's called the emotional freedom technique, or EFT. For the slang of it is tapping, because you tap on different parts of your body. Sure. Different words are said. And what's great about guys that are people that are addicted to porn is that you are using your body in an unhealthy way. Well, you use this tapping technique that you tap on acupuncture or acupressure points in a certain way while saying certain things. And you're using your body in a positive way. And it works. Like, it works.
I love that. Okay. We're going to have to wrap up for this week, but I think I'd like to start next episode, next week with you, talking about tapping and also how you then shared with your wife. Again, you got married while you're struggling with this huge addiction. And I think that talking about how porn use affects relationships, I think is going to be kind of key. And what you tell your kids about all this stuff too, because that's huge, especially when you've got boys. Yes. Not the girls don't have issues, because gosh knows we do. So, and if I can, just before we wrap up though, I want to make sure, like, I love that you found an alternative to the, sex addiction, to the SLAA, but for anybody out there who has found help through those 12-step programs, power to you too, right? We're never going to say it's like there's not one right way to enjoy sexy. There's not one right way to recover from whatever it is that ails you. So we're putting things out there, and this is Eric's experience, which is awesome. And each of us deserves to be able to try different things and to figure out what works, because there's goodness in all sorts of different ways. So, and it's hard to go off the beaten path, and some people need to do it, and then others can follow, and some will stay on the path. And whatever it is, we want goodness for everybody. And I know that's your thought too, Eric, right? It's just
Absolutely.
Yeah. And all right. So thank you so much. Oh, there's also an Unbroken Brain, by the way, a book, Unbroken Brain, that talks about addictions. And that's somebody who struggled with drugs, but also didn't find help through the traditional 12-step programs, and has a lot to say about it. She's also another fellow Cornellian and stuff, but highly recommend if you're struggling with any kind of addiction or know someone who is. So, all right. Well, thank you, Eric, so much for joining us. And thanks, Eric and Tina. I'm Beth Darling. You can find me at bethdarling.com. And Eric, tell them where they can find you.
PowerfulEric.com, or go to my podcast, Porn Talk.
There you go. And on one of those episodes on Porn Talk, I'm excited, or two of them, I was a guest with you. So I appreciated it lots. We got to talk a lot about me, and now I'm glad we get to turn the tables and talk about you here. So, all right. Well, thank y'all so much. It is absolutely a pleasure. Thanks for joining us for Come With Us podcast, where you're part of all the naughty, sexy, fun conversations. Thank you. And we will see you next week, and we'll have more with Eric Zuzak, Powerful Eric. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Come With Us podcast. Be sure to follow us on social media at Come With Us Podcast, and send in your questions, comments, and confessions to comewithusconfessions@gmail.com. Until next time, keep it fun, flirty, and naughty.